Hello everyone, I'm Nu-Trix, and today we're playing with Multiphonics CV-1 from Applied Acoustic System. You probably know a.a.s. You might not know the name, but I'm pretty sure that you know them if you played with Ableton Live. Some of the packaged synthesizer inside Ableton Live are made by Applied Acoustic System. And they're, you can see by the logo at the corner that they're made by them. They're really good at creating these virtual analog or virtual recreation of mechanical instruments, strings instruments and piano, electric piano sounds and stuff like that. And they also have a synth. And I did some other videos about their analog synthesizer, and it should be probably up there. And they've got a ton of really cool, I would say bizarre instruments, but they're not bizarre. They mimic acoustic realities, and that's where it becomes kind of bizarre because you can then bend it, which is pretty cool. I'm probably going to do a video one day about the String Studio where you can actually really play weird stuff with the strings. So now they have something called the Multiphonics CV-1, which is a modular synthesizer. Now, you have to remember that Applied Acoustic System was doing this 21 years ago. I remember in 2000, I had the visit of one of the founder of a.a.s. coming at the School of Music Technique where I worked in Montreal, and he was just showing me the new software was called Tasman. And Tasman was a huge modular synthesizer. It was just like virtual in the computer, but remember that in 2000, computers were not, I would say, ready for this, and it was a little bit CPU heavy. Now, over the years, of course, computer catched up, and Tasman at one point was a really, really cool thing to play with, and I remember that I was actually teaching that Tasman environment so that you could create almost anything. So now they have this modular synthesizer coming out, and it's actually pretty cool. It has its own sound. Like anything you have out there, you play it and it has its own sound, and it has an applied acoustic sound. So if you like the sound of a.a.s, you're going to love this. If you don't like the sound of a.a.s, well, look somewhere else. But they have their own filter, they have their own delay, they have mix. Let's actually go through it really quickly. But there's some reason, there's really cool features in there for people that starts with modular synthesis. Of course, a virtual modular synthesizer, it's a huge plus compared to hardware. Costs a lot less. You can total recall everything you do. You can just save your patch and load it back up, which is not something you can do with hardware. It's patched, and then if you don't like it, you depatch and repatch and it's gone. So let's actually go in. I'll show you what I mean by that. I have this little synthesizer here playing. I've got the pitch sending to the tuning. Actually, it should be going to here. I have the trigger or the gauge should be sent to the envelope here. And I have the same going here. So send the pitch also here. So what's interesting here is actually the level. Now, if you look at the level here for this one, you see how this is moving. Now, I'm actually running a lot of things on my computer, so I might have a problem just trying to making this happening the right way. So this is the movement of the LFO. This is this movement here. If I go faster, you see the movement going faster. If I go slower, you see if I go, I want this to be pulse instead. It's going to be pulse instead of this. Down. And it's going to go up. Come on, up, faster. Up and down and up. So this is how you look at it. You actually have this to give you, I want to know the movement of my LFO. I see this. I want to know the movement of my ADSR. Well, actually, look at this. Goes up, stays there. Now this is the sustain. See here, sustain, 2 different values. And when I release, this is the time of the release. So it's very visual, and that's the cool part about all this is somebody who doesn't know, it's a very visual way to look at what you're doing. Like here, the rate is really fast. You see this moving really quickly. So it's very simple. You've got classic VCO, compact VCO. I've got an FM between these two, and actually the depth is the maximum. So this one, if I listen to only this one, I've got some LFO going here. So if you want to do a 7-operator synthesis, FM synth, you can do that. Because you just add 7 of them, you patch them the right way, and then you send it to the right, and you have this. So it's really powerful. I mean, anything that does modular can do that, but if it's hardware, you need to buy 7 of them. In this case, you just drag one, and it works. And the states variable filter, you have that movement here. Let's actually bring less of that. And less of this one. I don't know. And the growl is that. It becomes a little bit digital, in my taste. It's just like massive sound. I love this. I love this. It's like big sound. And this is 3 oscillators combined together. It's just cool. It sounds good. It's fun. But I wanted to talk to you earlier about this little thing called the object filter. Object filter, it's a little bit different, and it's not something you'll find somewhere else easily. So when you send your sound into it, the 3 is the root frequency, the 2 is the resonance, and the decay time, and the object matching the current filter response. So do they talk about, so you've got a membrane, a drum head, a rigid plate, like on a piano, Rode piano, for example, a string, a marimba, and a beam. And these are these things here. So these are these different body of vibration, if you want. Then you got the frequency, which is basically the size of the thing that would vibrate it. It's like if you were sending the signal through, let's say, a membrane of a drum head. And then you would play with the size of it. Big, small, and how much this thing's going to be resonating. So this is totally different, and this exists as an app on the iPad. Then I made a video about it, and it should be there, I guess. So interesting, different. Let's say we start from scratch. Let's say we go new. You always have that top section there where you have the keyboard section. If I play on the keys, you see the trigger, the release, the gate. So you have trigger in, the gate, the length I'm playing, and the release value. So these are 3 different values, which is interesting because it means that you have 3 different controls. Of course, you get the trigger, the gate, the release, which is not something you always see on analog synthesizers. Sometimes in modular, you only have like the gate, which is a trigger and a release at the same time. In this case, these are 3 different messages. So if you connect the gate only, it's a trigger, gate, and release. If you use the 2 other, it means that you can have a action after you release. You can have, so it's interesting. I like this. It opens up. You have the note, the bend, the pitch. Of course, my modulation, I would see modulation. If I go bend, well, it's going to be in the bend, but I don't see the bend right now because there's no value for it. And if I play, well, all the information should be there playing out. So if you get the output is basically the whatever you're going to make in your window when you want to hear it, you're going to send through the output. And on the far right, you have effects and settings. And then where you say where you want this to set, and then there's the audio setup to where you want to send this. And you get a master clock. There's an input, so it can be slave to something else, or they can be the master clock for everything else. You have this control here, which is very nice. On that, I mean, if you click here, you just have that section disappear. Click over there, you have the other sections disappear, and you only have your synthesizer. At the bottom of the screen, you've got these little keys you can play, like a keyboard. You can select different octaves, but of course, if I play the keys, it's going to be on my keyboard, then I'm going to be able to play it, or any MIDI input. Of course, there's the option of having memories, and you can just load these factory banks. Or let's actually, right away, let's go into the modules, see what you have. So you have all these modules here. They're separated by the type of modules that they are. So you have audio generator, the classic VCO, and you have it at the bottom here, and you can click and just drag. It's easy to do. So the classic VCO is a VCO, but it has a lot of stuff in it. So you have these different sections of outputs, like a sub output, a sine wave, triangular wave. So you have the sub, you have a sine wave, a triangular, sawtooth, and the square, which is, if you look at the top, there's a pulse width to control the square. You have FM input, which is really cool. You have hard sync. You have the pitch, of course, to control the note. And you have the 2 controllers and the amount, the depth of modulation to control the FM modulation. And of course, you get the tuning to play it, if you want to detune, and you get the fine tune and the hertz itself if you want to control the frequency it's going to play. So this is really cool. It's the classic stuff you have. You have a compact version. The compact version, basically, you lose some of the control, like the pulse width is not there. And you have less choices so you can go between a sawtooth and a square wave, which is, again, interesting because you have a different sound out of it. And there's only one out, whereas this one has many outs. So difference in how you're going to play it. There's a noise source, again, a different type of noises, and you have the pulse. So this one is really just a pulse control, but the pulse itself has different outputs. So you've got low pass, a band pass, and an high pass output. So because there's a cutoff right into the pulse itself. So this is interesting. This one is kind of another way to use it. So you could use it maybe to create some type of percussive sound if you want, or anything else. That's where it's really interesting. You have these really different VCO. So you have your sources here. You have the clocks. So you have another clock here. So that other clock could be just a clock to control a sequencer, because you also have sequencer at the bottom. You have one there, gate and CV sequencer. So this one is a gate sequencer and a CV. So it has both of them. Whereas the other one is a gate sequencer. This one is just a gate. So the gate is this thing. You want it on or off. And the other one is how much for the CV. So you get the CV and the trigger, where this one is just a trigger. So you're triggering stuff at a certain moment. You have 8 position. Now, the only thing I miss here, I would have loved to have like a forward, backward, back and forth type of approach. You'll be able to move them. But keep in mind that what's interesting about this gate sequencer is all of them have a separate output. So you could actually trigger a different thing for each of the steps. So this is really cool. So there's it opens up something totally different. That this one, the gate CV sequencer, well, it's more to play a bass line or whatever you want. You got the gate, the pulse, and the CV coming out, and so you can trigger a traditional like bass line if you want. Whereas this one, each of them can be a different sound. Now keep in mind that in modular synthesizer you would have a cable where you can combine two cables into one, so you can split or merge. Then you have a.a.s as envelope, so traditional envelopes. You have an LFO, which is again, and what I like it, all of them, they have two inputs of modulation. So you could have an envelope and an LFO just changing the attack, just changing the decay, I actually really dig the fact that I could have a bass line playing, and as I'm playing I can change with an LFO the decay value of that bass line. So over time the bass line, it becomes a soft bass line, and then a sharp bass line, and then a soft again, and then so even if it's a classic a.a.s, you have so many controls, and you've got the ending. So when you get into the end of the attack, this end will trigger something else. And well, I say, well, if you don't remember, you go, what is end for the attack? What is that? Well, at the top you've got a little question mark. You click on the question mark, and you've got the multiphonic manual. You click on this, and you go online, and you've got the whole thing as a online manual. So there's a lot of information. It's really well laid out. These guys are scholars, so they know what they're talking about and how they talk about it. So let's say we were looking at a.a.s, and you go a.a.s, 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 here we go. So what's the end? Well, we go to end of the attack output triggered when the end of the attack is reached. So it means that at the end of the attack you could actually trigger something else. So this is just, for me, it's like spaghetti of controllers, matrix combination. It's just like, that's going to be fun to play with. But you have to prepare all of that. So I like it. For each of them, they gave them a little bit extra controls and values and inputs and outputs, and makes it so that even with a traditional list, almost, you just go, yeah, I can do a lot with that. So you've got voltage source. So these are just like source of voltage you can control, and again, it can control anything you want. You have the state variable filter, which is a normal low pass filter, but you also have a band pass, high pass, low pass 24, and just the output, which is, I think, a low pass 12, but there's also a high pass. So you can move between the two of them. So this is really cool. Again, one filter with so much option. It's just one. And again, there's the FM modulation, and all of these sections, just the cutoff, have 4 different modulation sources. And the Q has 2, and the growl, which is kind of a, it's not a distortion, but yeah, but it sounds a little bit digital. Then you've got the dual, you've got the mix. Now remember that the mix are not just for mixing sound, they can also mix CVs. So the polarizing mix 5, which is a mix of 5 different sources. So that's it. That's the Multiphonics CV-1 from Applied Acoustic System. It's a modular synth, so it can be really bizarre, or it could be really, basic or really complex. It all depends on you and the preset that you want to play with. Now, if you want to hear a longer version of the preset, almost all of the preset, the factory preset that comes with it, look at the next video or the link there or there, I'm not sure. Click on it and you'll see the whole thing. That's it. So, if you like the sound, go ahead. You won't be sad about it, because it really is powerful. And there's, for each of the patches, there's an explanation of what they did and how they did it. So it's really cool. It's a fun way to learn. If you guys are into it and you ask for it, I might look into making maybe a small tutorial about starting from scratch with Multiphonics. So we'll see. We'll see. So until then, stay safe, make more music, and see you soon.